why your map is lying to you. Look, we need to have a real talk. Not the kind of talk you see on the big survival channels with the polished graphics and the gear sponsorships. I'm talking about the ground level truth that most people, even the prepared ones, are completely ignoring right now. You can have all the freeze-dried food in the world. You can have a safe full of lead. You can have a bug-out bag packed so tight it could survive a nuclear sneeze. But if you're standing in the wrong spot when the grid finally blinks out in 2026, none of it matters. You aren't surviving. You're just a high-value target in a cage. A well-stocked cage, sure. But a cage. Survival isn't a gear problem. It's a geography problem, plain and simple. We've already gone over the blacklist and the ghost protocol in the last few field notes. But those are just tools. Tools are useless if you're trapped. Today, we're looking at the actual map of the collapse. Why 7 specific American cities are basically designed by their own infrastructure to become death traps the second the supply chain snaps. This isn't theory. It's just how the roads, the water systems, and the population density actually work. If you're waiting for some cinematic disaster to tell you it's time to pack the truck, you've already lost. The signs are here, hiding in the smart city rezoning proposals and the water allocation bills nobody's talking about on the evening news. Today, we open the field notes on the 2026 Relocation Protocol. We're going deep on the 100-mile rule, naming the 7 hubs you need to get away from, and giving you the 7 states where you actually have a fighting chance. If you're in a cage, stop staring at the bars and start finding the exit. Let's get to it. Item 1, the 100-mile buffer and the 7 traps. Let's talk about the physics of desperation. Most people have a plan that sounds like this. When things get bad, I'll load up the SUV and head for the hills. Comfortable plan, also a fantasy. Have you ever seen a highway on a Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend? Now imagine that same highway with no cops, no tow trucks, no working gas pumps, and everybody's fuel light blinking red. That's not an escape route. That's a parking lot that slowly becomes a refugee camp. This is the 100-mile buffer rule. I call it the pulse, and it's just human math. When a city of 5 million people runs out of food for more than 3 days, they don't sit in their apartments and wait to starve. They move, they ripple outward like a shock wave, desperate and willing to do things they never imagined. A person on foot or a car stuck in gridlock hits a wall at roughly 100 miles. That's the impact zone. If your retreat property is 40 miles outside Chicago, you aren't out. You're in the front row of the first wave, spending every waking hour defending your porch from people with nothing left to lose. That's not a life, that's a siege. Here are the 7 cities where this math becomes a death sentence. New York City. It's an island. Manhattan connects to the outside world by a handful of bridges and tunnels. If those close for public safety, you're in a containment zone. You didn't choose to stay, you were kept. 8 million people, no graceful exit. Los Angeles, pinned between the Pacific Ocean and brutal desert terrain. Every major exit route, the 5, the 10, the 405, is a bottleneck on a good day. In a crisis, they become rivers of metal going nowhere. Those beautiful hills become walls. Chicago. Lake Michigan is gorgeous until January, when the heat goes out and the city becomes a giant freezer. Aging grid infrastructure, extreme population density, and flat surrounding terrain that offers zero friction to slow the pulse. Atlanta. One serious thunderstorm shuts down the interstates for hours. A real crisis turns I-285 into a permanent parking lot. Atlanta is also a major logistics hub, making it a magnet for desperate people trying to intercept supply trucks. Miami. You're on a peninsula with one direction out, north. Every person in South Florida knows it. When evacuation begins, you're in a column of humanity stretching hundreds of miles, burning fuel you can't replace, moving at walking pace. Phoenix, the most quietly terrifying on the list. Phoenix is an artificial oasis that exists because of electricity. When the pumps stop pushing water through the Cap Canal system, the clock starts. 3 days before a metropolis becomes a furnace with no water, in 115-degree summer heat, that's not a crisis. That's a mass casualty event. Seattle, Puget Sound on one side, the Cascades on the other. Geographically compressed with over 1 million people, and mountain passes that can be closed by weather or a single downed bridge. Beautiful. Also a geographic trap. If you're inside any of those 100-mile circles, you aren't prepared. You're just a resident with a nicer pantry. You need strategic depth. Enough distance that the pulse loses energy before it reaches your gate. You want topographical friction. Mountains, rivers, and dirt roads that aren't on any GPS app. If you can still see city lights on the horizon, you're still in the kill zone. Item 2, the 7 safe haven states. So where do you go? By 2026, a safe state has nothing to do with the political map on TV. It's about one thing: water sovereignty. There's a quiet, aggressive push right now to meter and allocate private water access. They call it resource management. What it actually is a mechanism to make your survival conditional on someone else's approval. You need places where riparian rights, your legal right to use the water on your land, are ironclad and culturally defended. Here are the 7 states where the land actually gives you a fighting chance. 1. Idaho. Rugged terrain, deep clean water tables, and a culture deeply skeptical of outside interference. Land is still accessible if you move now. 2. Montana, the king of strategic depth. Room to disappear in a way that doesn't exist in most of the country. Distance between population centers is your greatest asset. 3. West Virginia. People overlook the Appalachians, and that's exactly why they're valuable. A few downed trees can isolate an entire valley for days. That's not a problem. That's a feature. The pulse doesn't climb mountains easily. 4. Maine. Timber and natural water everywhere. Isolated enough from the northeast megalopolis to stay quiet in the early stages of collapse. Cold winters are a challenge, but they're also a filter. 5. Wyoming. Independence that isn't performative. It's structural. Half the state already operates with minimal grid dependence. Wide open spaces mean low population pressure and high resource availability. 6. Missouri. Specifically the Ozark Plateau. Good soil, reliable water, a longer growing season, and a central location away from both coasts. The Ozarks have been quietly self-sufficient for generations. 7. Tennessee. The Eastern Mountains specifically. Longer growing season than Idaho or Montana. Enough elevation to stay above the chaos. And a deeply rooted culture of community and practical skill. When scouting land, don't look at the view. Look at the source. You need a year-round spring or gravity-fed creek that doesn't require electricity. If your survival depends on a municipal pipe or an electric pump, you can't fix yourself. You aren't free. You're a tenant with a deed. Look for senior water rights. The older the claim, the more protected it is when allocation fights begin. Own the source, and you own the future. Item 3, the energy island. You've relocated. You've got land and water. Now turn that property into an energy island. Rolling brownouts are already being normalized in utility company language. That language is becoming reality. Most people make a critical mistake here. They think a few solar panels makes them sovereign. It doesn't. This house has power and food. True energy sovereignty is multimodal and low profile. Start with a masonry heater or high efficiency wood stove. Wood is the ultimate ghost fuel. You harvest it yourself. It doesn't appear on a bill. It works at 2 a.m. in January when the sun is gone and your solar array is buried under ice. Battery storage needs low signature placement in a root cellar, in a reinforced basement. Family warm, food preserved, not a single light leaking through the curtains. Ask yourself right now, can your house maintain a survivable temperature? You've just moved your dependency to a new zip code. You need thermal mass, thick walls, southern exposure. Item 4, high trust communities. You cannot survive 2026 alone. The lone wolf fantasy makes for great movies and terrible reality. Eventually you'll get sick. Your tractor will throw a belt you don't have a spare for. You'll need a second set of hands at 3 a.m. and there won't be anyone to call. And where a neighbor showing up with a problem is met with help rather than suspicion. Avoid bedroom communities. Subdivisions full of people who commute to city jobs and happen to have a rural mailing address. They're city dwellers with long driveways. When shelves go bare, they panic at the same speed as their urban counterparts. Look for working landscapes. Live near people who produce things. Butchers, mechanics, farmers, welders. These people generate hard value, skills that matter when the digital economy goes dark. These communities will simply go quiet. They'll trade a side of beef for a drum of diesel and never file a form about it. When you scout a town, don't look for the coffee shop with good Wi-Fi. Look for the feed store. Look for the yard with 5 old trucks and a welding rig under a tarp. That yard is a resource. You're not buying a zip code. You're joining a tribe. Item 5, the secondary exit. Situations evolve faster than plans. A wildfire, a sudden emergency management zone, a contaminated water source, any of these can turn your haven into a cage overnight. The same topographical friction that keeps the pulse out can also keep you in. You need a secondary relocation point, a pre-scouted location at least 10 miles away, reachable on foot. It doesn't need to be a cabin, a cached campsite, a friend's property, a prepared natural shelter. What matters is that it exists in your mind and on your boots before you need it. Know your backtracks, the logging roads, the creek beds, the fire access routes not on Google Maps. You're waiting for permission. Ground truth your routes. Walk them in the dark. Drive them in a rainstorm. Know every turn by feel and memory, not by screen. A route you've only seen on a map is not a route you own. A route you've walked in the mud at midnight is yours forever. A sanctuary is only a sanctuary as long as you have the power to leave it. Secure your land. Build your community. The closer. Destiny is a choice. When 2026 delivers what the data is already pointing toward, the death traps are real. The 100-mile rule isn't a theory. It's a physical law, written in road capacity in human desperation. The safe haven states are real. The window is narrowing every day as land prices climb and zoning laws tighten. Most people will wait. They'll feel the unease and tell themselves they'll handle it when it gets real and the land will be gone. My name is Shane, and these are my field notes. The time to move isn't soon, it's now. Subscribe to Shane Survives We're documenting the journey of the people who refuse to be counted.